This time we will have a look at real-life or potentially real-life cases that will elicit the philosopher in all of us. This will make you realize that moral philosophy does not simply belong to hypothetical, ridiculous and simplified exercises, but it is very much present in everyday life. Hello everyone, this is Wandering Tati. This video is mostly based on the book Justice, What's the Right Thing to Do by Michael Sandel, which I highly recommend if you are interested in moral philosophy. Let's discuss a couple of cases that, if you're anything like me, will enrage you and make you want to destroy humanity. The first scenario from the book I'm going to present has to do with the limits of freedom. A question that might arise from this is, do we own ourselves? Up to the point of being able to do anything at all that we want with our bodies and our lives? The libertarians would argue that yes, we do, or at least we should. Most countries forbid the selling and buying of organs, but some argue that those laws should be changed, as for instance, thousands of people die each year waiting for kidney transplants, and they say that people in need of money should be free to sell their kidneys if they wish to do so. This goes hand in hand with the libertarian notion of self-ownership. What do you think about this? Another question that arises is whether people who advocate for allowing such a market do it really for libertarian principles. Most people in favor generally put a lot of emphasis in the moral importance of saving lives. But if this were done by a purely libertarian principle, that should in fact not matter at all. In the book, they present this imaginary scenario in which some rich people would be wanting to pay good money to buy people's kidneys to place them as coffee table decoration. So these kidneys do not save anyone's lives, they actually go to waste. Do you think we should be able to sell our kidneys for this purpose? If you are arguing from a purely libertarian point of view of absolute self-ownership, then there is no reason to object to this. If I am free to do as I please with my body parts, I surely can sell them to anyone I want and to be used for any purpose. Saving lives has nothing to do with it. If you favor organ sales for life-saving purposes only, then you must concede that we do not have an unlimited property right in our bodies. The second scenario presented is that of an Indian farmer from a poor village that wants nothing more than to send his son to a good college so that he can have a better life. So some wealthy person offers to buy one of his kidneys and allows for the farmer to pay for the kid's studies. So far so good, right? Everyone got what they wanted and you can have a perfectly fine life with only one kidney. But of course, this doesn't end here. A few years later, the farmer's second son is in college age. Another wealthy person arrives to the village and offers good money for his second kidney. Do you think he should be free to sell his other kidney, even if going without any of those would surely kill him? If your case for organ sales rests on the notion of self-ownership, the answer must be yes. It just wouldn't make sense to think that the farmer owns one of his kidneys but not the other one. Actually, in the book they mention that in the 1990s, a California prison inmate wanted to donate a second kidney to his daughter, but the ethics boards of the hospital refused. Another aspect to keep in mind is the following. Is a farmer truly free, or are his options so limited that he will be coerced into deciding on something that will harm him? Do we all have the same kind of freedom? Now, you may think that these type of scenarios are far from being something of our concern, but for instance, Argentina's new president, a fervent defender of libertarianism, actually talked about these issues.
¿Vos estás de acuerdo con la venta de órganos?
Yo digo, es un mercado más, o sea, y vos podrías pensarlo como un mercado. Es decir, el problema es, ¿por qué, digamos, o sea, todo lo tiene que estar regulando el Estado? ¿Por qué, digamos, seguramente si vos tuvieras, de hecho hay estudios que están hechos en Estados Unidos, que si vos dejaras esos mercados libres, digamos, funcionarían muchísimo mejor y tendrías menos problemas. Es decir, es una decisión de cada uno. O sea, digamos, a ver, ¿por qué no puedo decidir sobre mi cuerpo?
This, unfortunately, is a true story. The Ford Pinto was one of the best-selling cars in the US during the 70s. But unknown to people buying it, it came with a terrible flaw. Its fuel tank was prone to explode when another car collided with it from the rear. More than 500 people died from these explosions and many more suffered severe injuries. When one of the burn victims sued Ford for the faulty design, it emerged that their engineers had in fact always been aware of the danger posed by the gas tank. But the company executive had conducted a cost-benefit analysis and determined that the benefits of fixing it were not worth the $11 per car it would have cost to make the gas tank safer. They had estimated that 180 deaths and 180 burn injuries would result if no changes were made, placed a monetary value on each life lost and injury suffered, which was $1,200,000 per life and $67,000 per injury in case you're curious. Then they added to these amounts the number and value of the Pintos likely to go up in flames and calculated that the overall benefit of the safety improvement would be $49.5 million. But the cost of adding an $11 device to 12.5 million vehicles would be $137.5 million. And so they decided that the cost of fixing the fuel tank was not worth the benefits of a safer car. What is your opinion on this? How the hell is it that Ford kept selling cars after this is the real question? The jury was understandably outraged when they came into this knowledge. It awarded the person suing $2.5 million in compensatory damages and $125 million in punitive damages. What do you think happened here? Did the jurors consider it wrong for a corporation to assign a monetary value to human life? Or did they think that $200,000 was a ridiculously low amount? You'll be shocked to know that Ford did not come up with that figure on its own, but had taken it from a US government agency. In the early 70s, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration had calculated the cost of traffic fatality by counting future productivity losses, medical costs, funeral costs, and the victim's pain and suffering. And it all amounted to $200,000. According to Jeremy Bentham, who founded utilitarianism, the right thing to do is whatever will maximize utility, by which he means whatever produces pleasure or happiness and whatever prevents pain or suffering. If the jury's objection was to the price tag itself, a utilitarian could agree, as they might see our tendency to recoil at placing a monetary value on human life as an impulse we should overcome. What they would probably argue is that to measure the full effect on utility of a traffic fatality, one should have to include the victim's loss of future happiness in the calculations. I will leave with you this question: what do you think would be a truer estimate of the monetary value of a human life? Or do you disagree on principle and think that such calculations ought to never be made? Are you of the idea, as many of the utilitarianism detractors, that placing monetary value on human life is morally wrong? As a side note from this case, in the 1930s, the social psychologist Edward Thorndike proposed an experiment in the attempts to prove that it is possible to translate our seemingly disparate desires and aversions into a common currency of pleasure and pain. He conducted a survey of young recipients of government relief, asking them how much they would have to be paid to suffer various experiences. How much would you have to be paid to have one upper front tooth pulled out? Or to have the little toe of one foot cut off? How much would you have to be paid to eat a live earthworm 6 inches long? Or to choke a stray cat to death with your bare hands? Or to live the rest of your life on a farm in Kansas 10 miles away from any town? Here you can see the results of this survey. So, are you saying that I will be getting a free farm that's far away from people, and on top of that I will be paid thousands of dollars? Where do I sign? And why did people consider this the worst one? Is Kansas so bad? Let me know in the comments below. The final case I'd like to present is another horrible true story. It took place during the summer of 1884 and involves 4 English sailors who were stranded at sea in a small lifeboat in the Atlantic, many kilometers away from land, after their ship, the Mignonette, was destroyed in a storm. Apparently, all that they could salvage were 2 cans of preserved turnips and they had no fresh water. Thomas Dudley was the captain, Edwin Stevens was the first mate, and Edmund Brooks was a sailor. The 4th member of the group was a cabin boy, Richard Parker, of 17 years of age. He was an orphan who signed up for his first ever long voyage at sea in the hopes that it would make a man out of him. As you might have guessed, this was not the case. He did not get to be older than 17. During the first 3 days, they rationed the turnips. On the 4th day, they caught a turtle and ate it. After that, and for 8 days, they had nothing to eat. By that time, Richard the cabin boy had become really ill after drinking seawater against the advice of the others. He appeared to be dying. On the 19th day, Captain Dudley suggested drawing lots to determine who would die so that the others might live. Apparently, there were some precedents of this among sailors, but Brooks refused, so they did not draw any lots. The next day, it seemed evident to Dudley that they were not going to be saved on time, so he told Brooks to look the other way as he motioned to Stevens that Parker had to be killed. He offered a prayer, told the boy that his time had come, and then killed him with a penknife, stabbing him in the jugular vein. After the deed was done, Brooks ended up joining in on the meal. For the next few days, the 3 men fed on the body and blood of the cabin boy. And then, as Dudley himself put it, on the 24th day, as we were having our breakfast, a ship appeared at last and saved the 3 remaining men. Once they were back in England, they were arrested. Brooks ended up turning state's witness, while Dudley and Stevens went to trial. How would you have ruled were you the judge? If we put aside the law, do you think it's morally permissible to kill the cabin boy? An argument in favor of their actions is that it was necessary to kill 1 person in order to set free. That had they not killed and eaten 1 person, all 4 of them would have died. And that Parker, weakened and ill, an orphan with no wife or children, was the logical candidate. From an utilitarian point of view, what we would need to ask ourselves is, did the benefits outweigh the costs in this case? But we must be careful in our assessment. Even counting the number of lives saved and the happiness of the survivors and their families, allowing such a killing might have had bad consequences for society as a whole. For example, as discussed in the book, it could weaken the norm against murder, or increase people's tendency to take the law into their own hands, or even something like making it more difficult for captains to recruit cabin boys, as they would know that should anything happen, they are the first candidates to become lunch. But even if we could argue that the benefits outweigh the costs, is that all there is to it? Or are there certain duties and rights that should command our respect for reasons independent of the consequences? Are certain rights fundamental? Had Parker chosen to sacrifice his life, most people would say that he had the right to do so. But his mates had no right to end a life that did not belong to them. Or did they? What do you think about this? Perhaps you may agree with a Kantian view of morality and think that the boy was treated as a mere means to an end and not as an end in himself, as he should have been. In case you're wondering how did the authorities found out about this fact, I thought I should mention that Dudley himself was responsible for this. He did not once try to hide what they had done, as he considered his actions to be justified. He thought that killing and eating Parker was a tragic necessity, and incredibly so, the general public seemed to agree with him. And if you're also wondering how the trial proceeded, Dudley and Stevens were found guilty and initially sentenced to the statutory death penalty with a recommendation for mercy. A panel of judges found that there was no defense of necessity to a charge of murder, neither on the basis of legal precedent nor on the basis of ethics or morality. Further, the judges questioned who was qualified to make the decision of who should live and who should die were the principle to be allowed. Later on, the Attorney General William Harcourt decided that the sentence should be 6 months imprisonment for both men. Hopefully this video helped at least a little bit in making you question the core of your moral principles. I am a firm believer that questioning ourselves is always a good thing, as it allows us to better justify our claims and be able to consider the fact that we might be wrong and to really listen to other people's ideas. I look forward to reading some of your ideas in the comments. If you found this video interesting, please remember to like, share and subscribe to support the channel. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, until next time!